Less than 5% of the planet's land surface holds more than half of the oil we know about, and it isn't scattered around in small pockets the way it is everywhere else. Beneath the Persian Gulf, there are more than 30 supergiant fields, and an average well in that region can produce in a single day up to 5 times what the best well in the North Sea produces. The explanation you've probably already got in your head is that millions of years ago, all of this was a warm, shallow, tropical sea, absolutely packed with life. And that's not wrong, because it genuinely was. The problem is that so were the Gulf of Mexico, the North Sea, and the Caspian. All three were warm seas, all three have oil, and not one of them comes anywhere close to this. So life can't be the answer. Life is just the ingredient, and half the planet had it. What makes the Middle East different isn't what lived down there. It's something considerably stranger. It's what refused to rot. And there's a second half to the story that almost nobody tells, because the same force that shoved all that oil under the desert also raised a wall of stone that today leaves it a single way out to sea, 55 kilometers across. Rotting is the default. It's what happens to essentially everything that dies on a seafloor. Bacteria get to it within days, and whatever they leave behind, oxygen finishes off. Almost nothing that has ever died in an ocean has managed to stay dead in one piece. So the question was never where the life was. Life was everywhere. The question is where life could die without being eaten. And about 150 million years ago, there was one place on Earth that was extraordinarily good at that. No peninsula yet, no desert, no coastline you'd recognize. Just an ocean called the Tethys, and the corner of it that matters sitting 5 degrees south of the equator. Bath warm, shallow, and swarming with plankton in numbers that are honestly hard to picture. When those organisms died, they sank. And here's where every other warm sea in history loses the game. But across huge stretches of the Tethys, the water at the bottom had almost no oxygen in it. A condition geologists call anoxia, which just means the bacteria couldn't do their job. So the dead didn't get eaten. They piled up layer on layer in the dark for tens of millions of years. That's the answer. Not more life, less decay. The Middle East is rich because its ancient seafloor was, in the most literal sense, a terrible place to be a bacterium. Bury that pile deep enough and heat does the rest. Somewhere between 2 and 4 kilometers down, at 60 to 120 degrees Celsius, what the industry calls the oil window. Pressure and temperature crack those organic molecules apart and rebuild them into hydrocarbons. Any hotter and you get gas. Any cooler and you get nothing. Oil doesn't stay where it's made, though. It's lighter than the water in the rock around it, so it creeps upward and sideways. Sometimes only a few meters in a million years. And it keeps going until something stops it. Get that part wrong, and the whole lot seeps to the surface and disappears, which is precisely what happened across most of the planet. The Middle East got 2 enormous pieces of luck here, and they arrived stacked one on top of the other. The first is the reservoir rock. Under Saudi Arabia sits a limestone called the Arab D, laid down on that same Tethys shelf, and in places up to 35% of it is empty space. People picture an oil field as an underground lake. It isn't. It's a stone sponge, soaked through. And the Arab D is one of the finest sponges nature has ever produced. The second is the lid. Sitting directly above it is a layer of anhydrite, an evaporite, the mineral crust a shallow sea leaves behind when it dries out. Between 30 and 100 meters of it. Anhydrite and salt make almost perfect seals because nothing gets through them, and under pressure, they don't shatter. They flow. Put the sponge under the lid and you get Ghawar. Discovered in 1948, brought on stream in 1951, Ghawar runs 280 kilometers long by about 30 wide, covering some 8,400 square kilometers. That's a single oil field larger than Cyprus. In 1981, it was producing 5.7 million barrels a day. Still the highest sustained rate any one field has achieved in history. All of it from plankton that died in a sea that no longer exists. A seal only works if it stays in one piece. Nobody really talks about that because it sounds obvious, right up until you see what happens when it fails. Push a slab of rock hard enough and it folds, and if you keep pushing, it breaks. And the moment it breaks, every crack becomes an escape route. Oil that took tens of millions of years to gather can drain away through a single fault in a geological blink. Look at the two sides of the Persian Gulf, and you're looking at both outcomes of that same experiment. On the Iranian side, the Zagros Mountains run for 1,800 kilometers, built from rock that has been folded, thrust over itself, and fractured by the collision that raised them. There's still oil there, enormous quantities of it, but the structure has been worked over. A few hundred kilometers away on the Arabian side, that same squeeze arrived as a gentle tilt instead of a fracture. In Ghawar, geologists specifically note the general absence of faults at reservoir level, and that isn't trivia. That's the reason the field exists at all. The rock bent just enough to make a trap and never enough to make a leak. So the Arabian platform got the ideal seafloor, then the ideal sponge, then the ideal lid, and then it got squeezed by exactly the right amount. Which raises the obvious question: what was doing the squeezing? Arabia hasn't always been where it is now. For most of its history, its northern edge was what geologists call a passive margin, a quiet boundary between continent and ocean, tectonically dull the way the east coast of the United States is today. And dull is exactly what you want if you're trying to preserve organic matter for 150 million years. Then Arabia began moving north into Eurasia, and everything changed. That collision has been running for roughly 35 million years, and the first thing it did was crumple the leading edge upward into the Zagros. But mountains are heavy, and their weight presses down on the plate behind them and bends it. Picture standing on the end of a diving board and watching the whole thing flex. That flexing creates what's called a foreland basin, a long, shallow trough in the Earth's crust, running parallel to the mountains. Two things then filled that trough: hydrocarbons migrating in from every direction and pooling in the low point, and water. That trough is the Persian Gulf. It's why the Gulf is so odd for a sea of its size. Barely 110 meters deep at its deepest, and no more than 340 kilometers across at its widest. It isn't really an arm of the ocean at all. It's a dent pressed into the crust by the weight of a mountain range that happened to fill up with seawater. So the collision built the trap, and it dug the basin. It had one more thing to do. At the southern end of the Gulf, where Oman meets the United Arab Emirates, a peninsula called Musandam juts north into the water like a thumb. Sail past it, and you're looking at cliffs of pale limestone dropping 800 meters straight into the sea, cut by inlets that look genuinely like Norwegian fjords. That limestone is the reason this story has a second half. Musandam is an enormous outcrop of carbonate rock, Permian to mid-Cretaceous in age, and petroleum geologists established back in 1980 that these formations correlate directly with what's been drilled in the wells out in the Gulf to the west. Read that again, because it's the entire video in one sentence. The mountain blocking the exit is made of the same rock as the reservoirs holding the oil. The Arabian carbonate platform is 4 kilometers thick, and it hosts some of the largest oil fields on Earth. Nearly everywhere, it stayed buried. Here, during the collision, a thrust fault shoved a slice of it west and upward until it broke the surface, which is why geologists travel to Musandam specifically. It's the one place you can walk around on the outside of the reservoir rock. Same event, two outcomes. Push the platform down and it cooks into a trap worth trillions. Push it up and it becomes a wall. And that wall happens to be standing in a very particular place. Musandam squeezes the mouth of the Persian Gulf down to about 55 kilometers. That's the door. Every barrel produced by Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, and the Emirates is produced inside that basin, which means all of it has to leave through that gap. Around 20 million barrels a day normally move through the Strait of Hormuz, roughly a fifth of everything the world burns, along with a similar share of the global trade in liquefied natural gas. And for all those 55 kilometers of width, the usable shipping lanes are only about 3 kilometers across each. One in, one out, with a buffer between them. This is nothing like the Panama Canal, where a blocked route just means a longer voyage around South America. A tanker already loaded in Basra has nowhere else to go. There is no second door. People have understood this for a long time. After the Iranian Revolution, King Khalid authorized a pipeline running straight across the Arabian Peninsula, 1,200 kilometers, from Abqaiq on the Gulf to Yanbu on the Red Sea. Bechtel finished it in 1981 for about $2.5 billion, and for the next 4 decades it mostly sat there running well below capacity. The most expensive insurance policy ever written. In March 2026, it was finally pushed to its physical maximum, 7 million barrels a day, and then it hit the thing nobody had planned for. The port at the far end can only load somewhere between 3 and 4.5 million. They'd built the escape tunnel and never widened the door at the other end. There's no tidy ending here because the geology isn't finished. Arabia is still grinding north a few centimeters a year. The Zagros is still rising. Musandam is still being tilted and shoved. Everything you've just watched is a snapshot of a process that will carry on long after the last barrel is gone. But it's worth sitting with what it actually means. The Middle East is the richest oil province on Earth because of one specific run of accidents, a seafloor where nothing could rot, a sponge to hold what formed, a lid that never cracked, and a collision that arrived late enough to build the trap without breaking it. And that same collision, in the very same movement, lifted a slab of that reservoir rock out of the sea and set it down across the only exit. The oil and the bottleneck were never 2 separate stories. They're one story, and it began 150 million years ago in a sea that doesn't exist anymore. So, if you'd been the one holding the map in 1948, and you'd understood the geology properly, would you have called it the greatest prize in history or the most expensive trap ever built? Tell me in the comments. I read all of them.